Hi guys, so I finally have some time to film this video that I've been wanting to film for a while. I presented the idea on Instagram first, but this is something that I've been wanting to film for a long time now. Um, Let me first off start and say that I am not a YouTuber, clearly. There's not going to be any special editing to this. There's probably going to be no cool effects. This is just going to be real and raw and me kind of talking to you guys about my experience and my journey, and hopefully it helps other people that are going through what I'm going through or know somebody that's going through this. And if nothing else, I hope that at least you can relate to my video. Sometimes knowing that someone else is going through something that you're going through, there's some comfort in that. And I know that there was a lot of comfort in that for me, in feeling like I wasn't the only person going through what I was going through. So let me start off and introduce myself. So I'm Anna, I'm 25, and I have a disease called endometriosis. Endometriosis is a disease where the tissue that lines the inside of your uterus, a tissue similar to that, grows outside of your uterus. So on the outside of your uterus, on your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, your bladder, your intestines, things like that, and it causes severe pain. It can cause adhesions, it can cause lesions, cysts, but overall pain is probably the biggest symptom of it. 1 in 10 women are affected by endometriosis, which is something that I didn't know until very recently. I don't know anyone personally that has endometriosis other than, like close family members, so it's not something that I've gotten to talk to other people about very much. I've met maybe a couple other people here and there that have had it, and usually when I even bring it up, people are like, what is that? What? I've never heard of that. So I wanted to just bring awareness for endometriosis, for people that suffer from endometriosis, who are trying to get a diagnosis for it. There's other people out there that are like you. You don't have to be alone in dealing with this. For people that don't know endometriosis, and if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my laptop because I don't want to miss anything. And I kind of jotted down like some notes for what I wanted to talk about and bring up. But for people that don't know, some symptoms of endometriosis are painful periods, severe pelvic cramping, heavy bleeding, infertility, pain with sex, painful ovulation, urination and bowel pain, constant fatigue, bleeding in between your periods, digestive problems, and ovarian cysts. So I know some of these symptoms are common to like PCOS and some other types of like fertility issues. I'm going to speak specifically on endometriosis just because that's my own personal experience. But another disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I'm not an endometriosis specialist. I'm just going to be sharing kind of my own personal experience. So yeah, I guess let's get into it. So endometriosis is not often diagnosed. A lot of doctors aren't very familiar with it, even though it is very common. It usually takes like 8 to 10 years to even get a diagnosis for it, and that's because it's hard to even prove that you have endometriosis without doing a surgery to go inside your body and actually see that the tissue is on other organs. I had a total blank, but I guess let me just get into my own experience because that's what I'm here for. So I had my first period when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, and I remember it being very painful from my first period and all the way up through high school. My periods were very painful, and thank God I had a mom who was very empathetic and endearing to what I was going through and didn't try to like discredit what I was saying about my pain. But I would miss school because of how bad my cramps were. I would sleep for really long periods of time because of how much pain I was in. I was constantly taking ibuprofen and Tylenol and using heating pads, and that was my life for a very long time. And I got on birth control probably when I was like 15. And that helped with some of the pain for a while. I had a consistent period at that point. So I was having a period every month as opposed to like sporadic bleeding, random bleeding. But even with the birth control pill that I was on, I still developed ovarian cysts, which ruptured when I was in high school. I can't think of the specific times, but I had at least 2 that ruptured when I was in high school, to the point where I passed out from the pain. I had to go to the ER. And I remember anytime I went to the doctor for any type of like period pain, ovarian cyst pain, the doctors were kind of just like, you know, this is a woman thing and all women go through this, and, you know, prescribed me some ibuprofen and sent me on my way. And that was just kind of my life. And I thought it was completely normal that, you know, everyone dealt with periods like this, that, you know, maybe I was being a baby about it, maybe it wasn't that bad. And so I was on birth control pills from when I was 15 to probably 21 or 22. And at that point I had an incident where I had severe bleeding for 30 to 40 days. Really heavy bleeding. I was feeling fatigued. I had a lot of abdominal cramps, a lot of pain. I went to the ER. They did ultrasounds, couldn't find a cyst or any real cause to my bleeding and my pain. And then I saw a gynecologist, and I went with my mom, and the gynecologist started, you know, asking me, do you have these symptoms? Do you have, you know, severe pelvic cramping? Do you have pain with sex, bleeding with sex, urination and bowel pain? Do you have constant fatigue? And I was like, yes, 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 checking off all these boxes. And my mom was just like, why didn't you ever say any of this? You know, I mean, she knew that I had had really bad periods, but a lot of the other symptoms, you know, were kind of taboo to talk about, even with your own mom. So I just never brought them up. And after this doctor was bringing them up, she was like, do you know about endometriosis? And not to blow my mom up, but my mom suffered with endometriosis her whole life. And so I was familiar with the word, kind of familiar with what it was. My mom had kind of thrown the idea out before, you know, hey, maybe you do have endometriosis, maybe this is something. And the doctor was like, okay, like, let's start some treatment for it. So she put me on Depo-Provera, which, for those of you that don't know, is the like birth control shot. A lot of people get on it just as like a common form of birth control. So I got on that. It didn't seem to help for the first couple months. So after that, I got on a very, very high dose of the Depo shot. So most people get the Depo shot every 12 to 15 weeks, and I was getting it every 8 to 9. And that's just what my gynecologist recommended. And it stopped my bleeding completely. I had no more periods, no more like in between bleeding. I still had pelvic pain, but not as consistent as before getting on it. So this was like my breakthrough moment. I was really so happy that I finally had found something that was treating my pain, treating the bleeding, and found a doctor that kind of validated what I was feeling. So for the longest time, I kind of felt crazy and in my own head, like, okay, maybe I'm being a baby about the pain. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe, you know, a lot of people go through this. And so I finally found a doctor that kind of validated everything that I was feeling, because doctors that I had had before were just like, you know, this is a normal thing. It's just your period, you know, a woman thing. This is just what people go through. And I didn't feel like that. I was like, this is definitely more than what normal people go through. So getting on the shot was super life-changing for me, and I was on the shot for about 3 years, didn't have any pain or anything. And I'll probably go into another video about Depo-Provera, like, separately, because that was a whole nother thing. But that was really the biggest treatment option that I had. With endometriosis, you can have up to 4 different stages. So there's a minimal, a mild, a moderate, and a severe stage. And the treatments for it really are just surgery or birth control. And even after you have a surgery, it can come back. So it's a chronic life issue. There's no cure for it. It's kind of something that you just have to figure out how to deal with and just handle it for your life. So for me, that was a little bit hard to deal with, knowing that this was gonna be how I had to live my life, and something that I had to constantly keep in the back of my mind, like figuring out what treatment options worked for my body, and knowing that I couldn't be on birth control long term. So you can't be on the Depo-Provera shot for more than 3 years. It's not recommended to be on it for more than 3 years, because it can cause like osteoporosis and bone issues and stuff like that. So I felt a lot of anxiety about what I was going to do when this wasn't an option for me. And so I started researching more into endometriosis, which I recommend so much. If you are facing endometriosis or think that you might have endometriosis, do your research, because there's a lot of options out there that are holistic, or diet options, supplement options that can help you if birth control is not something that your body responds well to, or not something that you want to get on. So yeah, I don't know. I'll probably have to dive into more different videos about other treatment options that I ended up doing, about the Depo-Provera, and that as like a whole separate issue aside from the endometriosis. But I kind of wanted to just open the door to this conversation about endometriosis, about fertility issues, about periods, about cramping, because I know that a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about stuff like this, and I felt uncomfortable talking about stuff like this for the longest time, and I'm tired of it. I kind of just want to reach out to people that don't feel comfortable in talking about it, and hopefully you feel comfortable talking about it to me, and maybe I can bring up some of your issues in my videos and talk about them that way. So if you have any like questions or things that you want to just kind of like shoot my way, feel free to comment them or DM me them. I want to make these videos more more frequent. That way this conversation doesn't just end right here, because there's so much more that I can dive into as far as like surgery, birth control, treatments, relationships. That's a big one too. So hopefully this video was helpful. If it wasn't, sorry. But it was helpful for me. It's kind of like therapy for me to be able to get this out and finally talk about it, and hopefully other people out there can relate to what I'm talking about. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.